From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Alexis, codename Doc Holiday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here, and that makes this stuff they don't want you to know. It's the top of the week, which means it is time for strange news. We're seeing a story that's kind of Black Mirror meets Bring It On, I think.
Yes.
We're
or
seeing,
like Keeping Up with the Kardashians or something, please.
Mm-hmm. We're traveling to one of the areas of the world that I don't know about you, but fascinates me the most. No big spoilers. And we've got a mesmerizing story from Texas. So where
no,
should,
really.
Right. So where should we begin? I got to tell you, Noel, I really like the story you brought because it touches on a trend that we kind of predicted, but in a really messed up way, don't you think?
In the most messed up way. I mean, let's just start with okay, so the idea of deep fakes. We've seen the video of Tom Cruise doing a magic trick, but it's not really Tom Cruise. I think we have a lot of Tom Cruise related deep fake videos. I think the first one that I saw that was the most mind boggling, where I was like, oh God, this is a thing that's gonna, have legs, was an appearance by Bill Hader on a Late Show, and his face, as he starts to do an impression of Tom Cruise and tell the story about meeting Tom Cruise, his face starts to morph into Tom Cruise as he's doing the voice, and it's just uncanny, but not Uncanny Valley. That's the point. I mean, it is a little bit, but it's it definitely has the feel of being pretty authentic, even if you can tell there's something a little off about it. But now with all these filters like on Snapchat and Instagram, where you can, smooth out all the wrinkles on your face, or make yourself look like a magical pixie or super, that's more like alternate reality. But it's starting to blur the line between alternate reality and these deepfake videos. So there's now apps, it used to be, it had to be, you had to really know what we're doing. It requires immense processing power to do these deepfake videos. Now you can literally get these face swap apps, or one where you can make your face appear on a character from a movie, just by uploading the different components or picking from a pool of available clips or whatever. And we've been talking from the start about how does this affect trusting what you see in the news, and the news already having been kind of maligned and given this bad rap. But now it's is seeing really believing? I mean, I think we all know that can be a very dicey question, but it seems like the first story that any of us have seen of this really kind of becoming, oh God, this is really could be a problem. It didn't come from where we thought it would. Maybe I would have thought it would have been maybe trying to smear a politician, or a celebrity, or some kind of blackmail, creating these fake videos. But it turns out it was from an absolutely unhinged, what I believe is referred to as cheer mom. So a mom, like a dance mom, is kind of a psycho helicopter stage parent for dancers. Cheer moms are that very same thing for cheerleaders. And this particular cheer mom in question is named Raffaella Spone. Great name, from Doylestown, Pennsylvania. And she's 50 years old. Should definitely know better. I'm surprised she got a hold of however she did this, unclear. But like we said, now it's been much more amplified. So what she did was, in order to smear or have ejected from the cheer squad her daughter's two rival cheerleaders. Cannot imagine what that would consist of, right? Maybe they didn't get along. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they were outshining her daughter in some way. Unclear. But she, using some kind of deepfake app or technology, or maybe she hired someone to do it, took these two young women and superimposed their faces from social media videos onto other bodies that were smoking, vaping. Some of them were nude, and some of them were drinking. So there's one video of the vaping that you can see, and the reason you can see it is because one of the young women actually came forward named Maddie Heim, who was 16. This happened about a year ago, or a little less than a year ago, and it's just now kind of coming out and hitting the press. But she appeared on Good Morning America and told the story of literally seeing this video that was texted not only to her and her parents, but to the coach directly. Also with veiled suggestions that she kill herself out of shame. Like to save face or something. It's, like harikari yourself because you've brought shame on your family. But to hear this young woman, Maddie Heim, kind of react to this on Good Morning America, she's literally like, I'm seeing this video and I know it's not me, but it is me. And I don't think anyone's going to believe me. She was genuinely concerned. And thankfully her mom did believe her and told her she would call the police. And they did call the police. And they also texted the number back. Big clue here. They texted the number back and got an auto reply, indicating that it was some kind of spoofing system, like the telemarketers might use to send auto texts for ads or whatever, or to mask a number so they can do an auto call, like a robocall. The police were able to trace it back to the IP address of Rafaela Spone, and she's in a lot of trouble. I believe she's been charged with something in the neighborhood of like menacing, youths or like corrupt. I don't know. Like I'm trying to think of what
it looks like. She's got 3 counts of cyber harassment of a child.
A child, yeah, menacing youths, aka
2 misdemeanors,
cyber harassment of a child. Yeah, what are the misdemeanors?
No child pornography, though. Or a better way to say it would be she's not being charged with depictions of abuse of children or underage stuff like that, and that gets us to a very weird area, which is going to be, I think, increasingly disturbing and important as the months and years continue, which is if she is making things depicting these children nude, then does she fall under various sex offender laws, right? Or does she fall under those, the various laws that are specifically meant to combat that kind of imagery? I don't see her being charged with that right now. 3 counts of harassment, cyber harassment, menacing a child, 2 misdemeanors. But I think you're right. I'm sorry, I'm trying to step back. There were a couple things to address. I think you're right. This is something that, as the technology is democratized, is just going to become more and more common. And I wonder, what becomes the mark of authenticity? Is there like a watermark that people have or some equivalent of that? A pixel? I don't know.
Yeah, it has to be especially when it comes to with this as well, but with things like official news, so much footage is released, and whether it's let's say it's ATM footage or it's blurry in the first place, and so it's already kind of compromised and a little dicey. You introduce this angle into it, and that kind of low res quality of the kind of footage that'll get broken as breaking news, it can be even more misleading. So there absolutely has to be some sort of chain of custody. Maybe we do it through the blockchain, you guys. How about that? Let's kill some more rainforests. I'm kidding. I'm only just now starting to realize how dangerous blockchain technology is and how horrible for the environment is every one of these. But there are ways that it does verify ownership and authenticity and chain of custody. But there's got to be something like that, where you can genuinely know that the footage you're seeing is authentic. Whether it's an origin, watermark, like you said, from when it was initially created, that can't be. But I don't know what that looks like, and surely there'd be a way around that too. But yeah, this woman, I mean, just looks like a real piece of work. I mean, not that mugshots are the most flattering images anyway, but she is just like a dead-eyed, thin-lipped, very severe-looking woman. I see darkness in her eyes. Let's put it that way.
I feel you. Like, I'm hesitant to. I don't like the exploitative nature of a lot of mugshot stories, I would call them, but from what I understand, the circumstances of events are pretty crazy. Philly Inquirer has one person saying, the parent of one person saying that this harassment began because he and his spouse told their daughter not to hang out with Spawn's daughter, and that they were concerned about this other kid's behavior. And then the mom kind of like went straight from Cold War to nuclear level harassment. I mean, how did she think this was going to play out? How would you legitimately think you would not get caught doing something like this? You know what I mean?
Unclear. Yeah. I think I've mentioned on the show before a YouTube channel that I really like called Internet Today, and they do a segment each week called Weekly Weird News, and they did a segment on this, and love those guys. But they made a joke that, well, if she'd only used ExpressVPN, she might have gotten away with it because they did ultimately trace it back to her IP address. So I don't know, Ben. I mean, I think it's likely she could have gotten away with it if they hadn't have been able to trace back. I mean, she tried to cover her tracks by using this phone spoofing. It was a pretty elaborate to do, but her lawyer does say she denies it unequivocally, and that she's been receiving death threats and is trying to paint her as the victim, which is what lawyers do. So obviously innocent until proven guilty, but it doesn't bode well. The facts are, there's a lot of smoke here, and feeling like there's probably some fire.
Well, this is what I want to bring up. She absolutely is innocent until it's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that she's guilty, or she pleads guilty in a court of law, right? So I just want to bring up the counterpoint, and I know it's uncomfortable, and I don't, I don't know how to have this conversation without being told I'm victim blaming maybe or something, but you tell me, guys. There is a possibility that some of the images were real, and the girls were very embarrassed that they were being released. And again, this is me painting drawing a picture from nothing, not knowing anything.
Got it.
Just saying, like, if I was putting myself in their position and some embarrassing photos came out of me while I was especially in high school, in the time when your reputation means so much, when your reputation level is one of the things that keeps you in the thing you love, in this case cheerleading, or in my case band or theater or whatever. But just I'm imagining if images like that came out, it could be really damaging to me, right? So
well, specifically
if
with
there could be
vaping,
there could be a scenario where one or more of those images were real, and somebody was putting those images out for whatever reason, but it was coming from that same IP address.
So how did the detectives then analyze it? Because they're the ones who ultimately said that these were deep fakes.
Yeah, I suppose I don't know what the actual analysis was, or what it looked like, and what those conclusions were, how tight those conclusions are. Maybe they're completely yes, 100%. These are all deep fakes, and they came from this IP address.
Or maybe they know the detective.
I think these are all valid points. And I think it's not like drinking or, entering into sexual activity or vaping is like some outlandish, cancel-worthy behavior from teenage girls. Like it's certainly a real thing. I mean, vaping and underage drinking and all of that is absolutely rife in high schools. But you're right. It is a question of one's reputation. The articles, the reporting that I've seen on it is only in a handful of places. The Pennsylvania, let's see, is actually the Daily Mail picked it up. Of course, it's just as a sexy headline. They picked up on the story when Maddie Heim went on television. So then you have one from Fox News and one from ABC. And then there's the original reporting came from Philadelphia. But yeah, it does say that the investigators determined that the videos were deep fakes using images from the girls' social media accounts.
Yeah. So again, if you've got the original and then the deep fake, and you're actually analyzing those two photos, and you could determine that, yes, 100% this was reused, right? Got it. It's just, for me, it feels like a Florida Man thing, right? Where you just get that early statement that this person is accused essentially of this thing.
And those laws are tremendously classist. Like, the legislation is going to have to be changed, revised extensively as we enter this new era. I do want to shout out a really clever thing that I learned about for differentiating between deep fakes and the real McCoy. If people still say the real McCoy, the genuine article, you know what I'm talking about.
You're bringing it back, Ben.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, we'll see. There's a thing called Fake Catcher, which is a tool that has an accuracy rate of a little bit over 90% with telling whether a video is fake or is the actual article it purports to be. And they do this by measuring a subtle difference in skin tone, which is caused by, get this, the human heartbeat. So every time your heart beats, your skin changes color just a little bit. That's really freaky. I think if someone's listening to this and they're looking in the mirror, we might have just messed with their day. Oh, yeah.
Do you remember the tech we talked about before? I think it was tech for baby monitors that was specifically using that. And it could alert if your child was in danger, especially at the very early months of, bringing a new baby home. It was using a camera, I think infrared, maybe not infrared, but to be able to see just below the skin, to see that pulse, just to make sure you could always monitor that child was, the heart was beating. And that sounds weird and a little weird, but I can imagine using that for the same reason.
Little more info on the nudes, the quote unquote nudes. The district attorney for Burke County, Weintraub is his last name, and Matthew Weintraub. He said that the nudes were, quote, somewhat imprecise in the videos. The victims, it was clearly originally videos or images of the victims in bikinis that were then digitally removed and overlaid with skin-toned bars, which absolutely would have triggered your app that you're talking about there, Ben. So yeah, he says, quote, it would seem the intent was to make it appear nude with no obvious genitalia. Described it as a Barbie doll-like effect. Wow. And the intent was to slut shame, quote, this is his words, the victims. He said that the reason that she was not given more serious charges was because it was a botched job. Hence the no child pornography or, sexualization of minors or what have you, because it was just so blatantly bad and obvious. So there you go.
Got it.
She dodged that bullet then. You know what I mean? But still.
So she could get 6 months, but very unlikely.
This is just a terrible story for the kids involved, I think.
Totally.
And I was trying to tease. Bring It On is that cheerleading movie, right?
Yes,
Am I thinking of the right one?
That's the one. Yeah, I think there's a couple sequels too, but yeah, that's the one with what's her name from Interview with the Vampire. I always still think of her as a little. Yep.
Which I mean as a compliment.
Totally. She's also great in the Fargo TV series, I believe, season 2.
Nice.
But tip of the iceberg for this stuff, fellas, really. And think of it, if a cheer mom could do this using an app or whatever. I mean, think of what people with really advanced technology could do to ruin people's reputations. But I guess it's good that we're all kind of collectively aware of this stuff. And it started off so innocuous as like a cute little internet trick. But now, you're really starting to see the true dark side of it. And, it can only go downhill from here.
My question is, how often has it already happened?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's the next question.
An article in the Washington Post, actually, that profiled this very early on, had a fascinating quote from a University of Virginia law professor named Danielle Citron, whose area of research is in digital harassment, free speech, and privacy, and made let's just say the first place stuff like this is probably going to pop up is in porn. Right. So you get like fake celebrity porn. That was always like a thing with like Photoshop, always blatantly obvious, but this professor noted that the deep fake sex videos are becoming a thing, whether it's to, target individuals or to try to blackmail them or, potentially for like the purposes of, entertainment. And they're getting better and better is what the comment is. And there's a quote here from this researcher saying, quote, "It's like an arms race. Pretty soon the dark hats are ahead of the white hats and we can't tell which is real." So that's kind of where we're at. And also notes the fact that it's gotten very user friendly. There are YouTube tutorials for how to do it. There are phone based apps. The barrier for entry for this kind of stuff is lower than it's ever been. And it's just going to keep getting lower. So.
Yeah.
Something to keep an eye on, but not necessarily trust your eyes when they're on it.
That's right. What we need is some sassy justice. Hopefully they'll come around soon.
Yeah, for sure. So let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor and then come back with some more strange news.
And we are back. And we are jumping over to a little combo of Newsweek and the BBC. We're going to use the BBC's headline, though. Here it is. You ready for it? North Korea not responding to U.S. contact efforts.
Ghosted? Did we get ghosted?
The Newsweek headline is Kim Jong-un ghosts U.S. as Joe Biden's North Korea shakeup looms.
It's unfair for me to say that because I'm all over this, Matt.
Yeah, I know. The headline alone is a little bit scary for those of you new to the party here. We've discussed extensively North Korea's interest in nuclear technology, nuclear weapons. We've discussed a lot of their practices in the past, some of the horrific things that have gone on there from stories of people who've escaped. Also, just the fascinating political and socioeconomic situation of everyday citizens there in the DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And in this case, we had a changing of the guard in the U.S., right? When President Joe Biden stepped in, President Trump stepped out. And generally, with any country, well, again, like Ben, I just want to talk with you about it. I just want to hear you talk about it, but I'll put it in my understanding. Generally, you want to have a touch base with your friends and your enemies when you've got a changing of the guard like that. And the current understanding is that the United States, since around February, has been attempting to make direct contact with Kim Jong-un or the top levels of the government there in the DPRK. And those emails essentially have gone unanswered, or the phone calls or whoever else they're attempting to contact the government there. We'll just read a little bit from this article. They're saying that Washington, or the folks there in Washington, have been attempting to reach Pyongyang in several different ways to prevent tensions escalating, because tensions are certainly up. There were several attempts with the previous administration of the U.S. to lower those tensions, but it seems like those efforts were not as successful as they could have been. Middling success there, forgetting from Ben's hand. At least according to the BBC, the talks failed to persuade North Korea to give up the concept or the attempt to build nuclear weaponry. In this case, it's to further refine the uranium and radioactive materials. Here's the other thing, and this one's a little confusing for me because I've read several articles for this. BBC is saying that the DPRK has failed to recognize Biden as the president, or Biden's the new administration, essentially. Is that your understanding, Ben?
Yeah. Yeah, they have. I mean, you're, as a foreign power, you're under no real obligation to play nice. A lot of this stuff could be best described as like polite rules of international society. Just like you said, Matt, call the person, congratulate them. You know what I mean? Even if you don't particularly care for them or care for what their country represents to you. But we have to understand there is a ton of precedent going into this ghosting of a president. First, North Korea, the current, and I'll say it, the regime they're big fans of the Trump administration, because the Trump administration was granting some legitimacy that the DPRK did not historically have in the West. And if you go back to just a few months ago, well, no, if you go back to like 2019, I keep forgetting 2020 also happened. If you go back to 2019, you'll see that North Korean official press had like called Joe Biden a rabid dog, said he was power hungry and that he should be beaten to death. This is all on record. And then he was saying that Kim Jong-un is a, quote, murderous dictator. They're not friends.
As opposed to Trump, who is pretty much complimentary. He very much clearly had a kindred attitude to the dictator, for obvious reasons. But yeah, that stuff. It's interesting though, Ben. You're right. Like it is sort of like formality. It's not like it's the law. I mean, it's alienating, sure. How much more alienated could we get from this regime? But it sure is an interesting escalation, right?
Yeah. I mean, Matt, to your point, like it is kind of unconventional, I would say, for these countries not to be speaking to one another, but it's unfortunate, like unconventional in that countries usually do speak to one another through some kind of channel, right? Some kind of diplomacy, even if it's backdoor. But the issue here is that if you look at it through the North Korean perspective, I would say we have to understand first, things are pretty rough, and probably from what we know, things are pretty rough on the ground for the average North Korean. And a lot of the stuff reported both by the country and by its opponents is just, it's straight up propaganda. There's no way around it. The waters are very muddy. I will stop TED talking after this, but this is a question, and it's something that I don't think we're hearing a lot when this is reported in the West. Let's say that you, Matt Frederick, through a very bizarre set of circumstances, inherit the leadership of North Korea. There was some stuff going on. 23andMe explained it, and now, boom, you are in charge of the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. Cool. Like that old John Goodman movie, Duke of Earl, or something like that. Never mind.
I don't know.
Okay, just read the wiki on it. But like, all right, so you're in charge. You're in charge of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. You are getting a ton of pressure from coalition's Western states telling you to step away from this nuclear weapons program. That's the main thing the West tells you about every day.
Yeah, and they also are hanging out very close in South Korea, doing tons of drills with the U.S. military and other powers that seem to be antagonistic towards us and our goals.
Yeah, and then you think, well, they're offering me some pretty cool carrots, right? And the carrot and stick idea. They're offering me some pretty cool carrots to say, yes, get rid of this this testing site that I have and get rid of the ICBMs that I have built. But wait, you start thinking, maybe, no, you're in this, you're like the number one advisor. You're the smartest guy in the room here. And you go, hang on. What happened to all those other countries that peacefully stepped away from their nuclear programs? Iraq, not doing super hot under Hussein. Libya, Gaddafi also didn't have a particularly happy ending. So the idea here, if you're Matt now, and if you're Noel, the advisors, the idea is that I, as North Korea, know the U.S. will have the number one goal of removing my ability to have nuclear weapons, no matter what you want to call it. They'll try to remove that ability. And if I help them, if I agree, if I comply, then history has shown me two very recent examples of just how terrible the outcome will be. So what do you say, Matt, at that point? Now the new president of the U.S. has been elected. This guy dragged you through the press for years.
This is my response. While we do appreciate your comments, the United States is most certainly our biggest enemy, though I'm not opposed to diplomatic maneuvers moving forward. There could be something we could work out, though you would have to make the first move, United States, because, we're here, we're North Korea, and we need you to show us that you mean business, and then maybe we can do something. But in the interim, if you don't do anything, here's what I need. And this is what we're going to do just until you make the first move. We're going to build longer range, better missiles. We're going to build hypersonic missiles. We're going to build some satellites for recon. We're going to do some solid fuel intercontinental ballistic missile work. Don't worry, it's cool. We're going to make some new nuclear warheads.
New nukes?
We're also going to build some tactical nukes and also some UAVs, a brand new UAV that can, do all kinds of fun stuff for us. So that's what we're going to be doing. You decide what what action you actually want to take in order to reduce the tensions here, and then we can talk.
Oh, man. Not quite sure how to feel about this, Matt.
It's scary. You should feel scared a little bit, just enough. But especially if you're in South Korea or you're, within a certain radius of the DPRK.
It can hit Alaska and maybe California, the Hwasong 14, which I'm probably mispronouncing, but that's the latest ICBM. I think they just started coming out in like 2017. They were revealed. But yeah, of course you're going to say that. And then there's also, in this conversation at some point, although it hasn't been widely reported yet, boom, China has entered the chat because China very much wants North Korea to remain as a buffer state, right? Between South Korea and to lessen the possible influence of Japan, et cetera, et cetera. So at some point, the president of the U.S., whoever that president might be, it's Biden currently, calls China. They have to. And they're like, hey, why is your boy on radio silence? And then China, the government of China, who knows how they handle that approach? They say, oh, whatever are you talking about? That's strange. Kim always answers the phone for me. Can you think of anything you might have done? Who knows? Who knows, man?
Well, listen to the rhetoric. So when Joe Biden was on the campaign trail, he would often, whenever asked a question, about tensions in North Korea or about dictators, there were all kinds of questions that were kind of lobbed at him. And he would always respond, not always, he would often respond by referring to Kim Jong-un as a thug and other, authoritarian people as thugs. And this is a quote from Joe Biden. "The days of cozying up to dictators are over." Clearly in a response to the previous administration and the views that administration was, had a different relationship with leaders such as Kim Jong-un. And I believe North Korea has referred to Joe Biden as a, quote, rabid dog.
Yes.
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
Them's fighting words.
Yes. And they went on, or someone, I believe it, I'm not sure if it was Kim. I think it was maybe just someone representing the DPRK. One of them said that he should be beaten to death with a stick.
Yes. Washington Post reported that too, I think.
Yeah. 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 And again, like the DPRK has consistently referred to the United States as their biggest rival, their biggest enemy, the quote, foremost principal enemy. And anything we could do to lessen the tension there, and like legitimately maybe in some way actually get the things that the civilians there need. I mean, we'll talk about it as many times as we have to, but there are people with genuine health concerns that are in need that live in the DPRK, who are just humans, just people like you and me, and they can't help that they're living in that regime, because we've learned that when one attempts to abscond, to get away, there are major issues, and we've reported on some of those here, and we've also been seeing it for decades.
Yeah. So the problem is generational punishment, meaning that if someone does something that violates the law in North Korea, their relatives can also be punished, maybe sent to a detainment camp or even executed. And when people leave North Korea, attempt to defect, when they go through China, there is a huge likelihood or huge possibility of these people being trafficked, being sold into marriage, being caught by the Chinese authorities, who do not consider them refugees, but consider them what are called illegal economic migrants. And they'll just be returned to their home country where, of course, they have violated any number of laws by defecting. These are huge issues. And one thing that it is crucial to remember is whenever you're hearing a story about a government that's doing things the rest of the world order disagrees with, the people who live in that country often have very little decision-making ability, right? Like North Korea is not checking with everybody who lives in North Korea about what the next policies should be. There's tremendous food insecurity. The international sphere, Order of Nations, still doesn't really know how hard COVID hit the country that was already in a very tenuous existence. China probably has a lot of information on this, but why release it? It's terrible because it's literally being used as a buffer, international bargaining chip. And this is a very old game. It's a game countries have played for a long time.
Man. Well, we're going to keep our eyes and ears on it. And, if you hear anything, please write to us, call us, whatever you got to do. We'll tell you how to do that at the end of this. But for now, we're going to take a quick word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with more strange news. And you aren't going to believe this one.
And we have returned. Longtime listeners, you know that I struggle every week to pick simply one story, because once upon a time in the predecessor to this segment, I was doing 3 stories every day. So now it's kind of got an opposite problem.
I'm glad you're okay, Ben, after that. That's a lot. It's a lot of stories. A lot of strange news.
Maybe okay. Who wants to bother being okay? It's 2021.
That's a good point.
I went past one story that I really enjoyed, which is the world's first unmanned supersonic fighter. I looked into the news about the Antikythera mechanism, right? That news is pretty much out there now and should be easy to find.
Hey, wait, Ben.
Yeah.
That the fastest unmanned thing, is that the story from Popular Mechanics about reusing the SR-71 engines in like an unmanned vehicle?
I found it on India Times.
Oh, okay.
But I imagine it would be reported in Popular Mechanics. It's right up their alley. Yeah, we're entering the age of supersonic unmanned craft.
Yeah, it's okay. My dog must be eating something she shouldn't be. But yes, that's awesome.
So I don't want to make that sound too interesting, because I don't want to shoot us in the audio foot here. It's a great story. It's fascinating. It's a little disturbing. You should read about it. But instead of supersonic unmanned jets, it is time to make the official announcement, folks. Texas Rangers have said that they will stop trying to hypnotize people. In other news, Texas Rangers have apparently been hypnotizing a ton of people. for more than 4 decades.
What, which is like with their like charming Southern drawl, or like how are they going about this?
No, they've got Chuck Norris. He's rolling around and he just kind of puts his shades down really slowly.
Yeah. Or if Chuck isn't around, they use the quite prestigious Texas Ranger badges. And they're just like, look into the rotation of the badge.
Oh, I get
You're
it.
getting very sleepy. Very sleepy. Now, who killed JFK? But no, I know it sounds like a crazy story, you guys, but it is true. I was not aware that hypnosis was being used this frequently by the Rangers specifically. And in an odd bit of synchronicity, I believe somebody has also posted this on Here's Where It Gets Crazy, which is rated arbitrarily by us as the absolute best page on all of Facebook. Here's what happened. So since at least the start of the 1980s, maybe a little before then, the Texas Department of Public Safety, which oversees the Highway Patrol and the Rangers, has been using hypnosis techniques to get statements from victims and eyewitnesses. They've used this technique, according to the Dallas Morning News, at least 1,800 times over the last 40 years. And this kind of hypnosis is not we've talked about this in the past. It's not the stereotypical, haha, balk like a chicken, or squawk like a chicken or whatever, or, you'll hear this magic word and then you'll moon people or anything like that. This is meant to to help people mentally regress through memories so that they can have more clarity of what they saw, witnessed, experienced. So like if this stuff works, then the idea would be, let's say someone has witnessed a carjacking, right? And they say, okay, we're going to put you under and we're going to use these hypnotic techniques to help you fully remember what you saw. So now you're just not saying it was a dude in a red shirt. You're able to say it was a dude in a red polo who was wearing blue jeans. He had a Lakers hat on. Or
This is
like
like
that.
regression hypnosis or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hypnotic regression. This is blowing my mind, Ben. I didn't think anyone, I didn't think any law enforcement agency would be using this. Generally, it's
It's controversial even in therapy, let alone for like eyeball witness accounts, right? Because it's notoriously unreliable.
So there is some solid science to hypnosis, but there's a really dangerous thing with this kind of approach. And it's this, if you are listening and you are a human being, then every time you remember something, you are not remembering that actual event. Every time after the first time you remember it. Instead, you are remembering the last time you remembered thinking about this thing. And your memory will be affected by smells, sights, sounds, sensations, even temperatures, all the stuff in your environment that you're encountering in real time while you're remembering something in the past. So it is very easy for new memories to be created. And you, as the person experiencing these memories, will not be able to differentiate between those memories and the real ones. Like in a way, this is, how full circle is this? In a way, this is like a predecessor to the deep fake of the digital age. And you don't need technology to do it. You just need a calm voice and a relaxed environment, and then someone who will go with you for the ride.
Wow.
And this is not saying the Rangers are doing this at all. They're not like purposely trying to implant ideas or distort recollections, but it's very, very easy to accidentally do that. And that's where it gets dangerous. Also, it's controversial, but Matt, you raised a good question, which is you said, I don't picture law enforcement doing this kind of stuff, but we know that law enforcement has been taken in by very unorthodox ideas or claims in the past. Like so-called psychic detectives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which we should do an episode on. I imagine it's weird that we haven't actually.
Yeah, several. I remember when we made the show about the Atlanta missing and murdered, we were so surprised to see actual news reports of Atlanta PD and a couple other police departments using psychic detectives or psychics to help them locate people.
With
I
like
couldn't believe it.
remote viewing type things, like to find bodies or all that.
Essentially, yeah, to locate remains.
Like I have a strong image of a bridge. There's running water. There's a sign. I see a sign. It starts with a
Wayne Williams.
Yes, that's the guy.
Unfortunately, that's how it works because there's a lot of cold reading involved there. But law enforcement we can't emphasize this enough. In theory, the way it's supposed to work is that law enforcement has to evaluate all citizen-like reports.
Mm-hmm.
So it's often not them necessarily going out and finding a psychic or someone who claims to be a psychic. Instead, it's somebody proactively calling them and saying, I know what happened because I have information about this. And then they have to say, okay, well, tell us, because otherwise you're not really doing your job, are you? I don't know. I didn't know this before, but at least 21 states have banned evidence in court if it's gleaned entirely through hypnosis. They're no longer going to let you play he said, she said with your past self, basically.
Well, it makes complete sense. Do we have any understanding of the people who were actually administering this? Were they bringing people in to run hypnosis sessions, or were they, I don't know, were the actual officers doing this, or somebody in the Rangers? I don't know. How did it work?
Yeah, so there was a program that was there's this program that was based on the work of an LAPD psychologist named Martin Reiser. In 1980, he wrote a book called The Handbook of Investigative Hypnosis. And this is one of the bedrocks of that program in Texas. And officers would be using these techniques. So they would be trained, at least in this regard. I think not quite 900 police have been certified by the state of Texas in this investigative hypnosis.
That's a lot.
In this, yeah, it is. It is a lot. But to be fair, we also don't know how many of those 874 people are still performing this stuff, or how many of them just took the course and then said, okay, well, I had that box checked off and now I don't have to ever worry about this again.
I mean, is this something that pops up in other law enforcement agencies? I mean, I've always kind of, probably because of Walker, Texas Ranger, assigned a bit of a mystical vibe to like the Texas Rangers. But now they're starting to feel a little more like a Jedi than like a detective. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's still been used by some police agencies or law enforcement outfits, I should say, as well as some intelligence agencies. But it's like, I think the thing that startles a lot of people, if they've just seen lie detectors on television and stuff, is that polygraphs are also kind of trash science. It's weird that they're still being used, at least in the way that they are. And with this idea of hypnosis, yeah, it's been around. Like people have been using or attempting to use these techniques with what they would argue are some credible results since at least the Second World War. So this stuff is around. But there's another issue here. And again, this is not accusing witnesses of lying. This is not accusing the individuals in law enforcement of purposely stitching someone up for a crime they didn't commit. But we know that multiple cases that result in convictions are based on what later turns out to be a witness somehow misidentifying a perpetrator. And these people who are wrongfully convicted may languish in jail for years before, say, a DNA test comes out, or before they are able to get access to legal assistance that can address the problems in their case. Also, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little torn reporting on this because I think the idea of like a hypnosis ranger is just so cool. It is so amazingly cool. Hypno Ranger, Walker, Hypno Ranger.
Totally.
Are you kidding?
It's more like Kane from Kung Fu or something, you know. Like, again, it's just got this real kind of mystic vibe to it. But I guess the way they use it, though, it's almost more like an interrogation technique than like, you know, look into my eyes kind of situation, right?
Well, yeah, okay, so, but it's for witnesses, right? It's for people who saw a crime. It's for people who were victims of a crime, who were a part of it, trying to recall stuff about a suspect, right? Or a person of interest. Well, I thought exactly what you just referred to there, Noel. When you first read this, Ben, I thought it was Rangers going out there, getting a person of interest into custody and then like hypnotizing them and then like trying to get them to tell them the truth. I was so excited about that. That's the one I want to see.
Yeah. Instead of a gun, they just like use their mind powers and hold out their hand. Freeze. That's the mind control noise. Yeah, that would be awesome. But the issue there is that it is actually quite difficult and somewhat unpredictable to use hypnosis in that kind of non-consensual way. There are ways around it, and you can exploit certain cognitive susceptibilities in certain individuals, but there's not really a silver bullet for that, even for the people who are very, very good at it. But I totally agree, man. If you could hypnotize criminals, that's a great TV show, but it also means that if you are an officer who hypnotizes criminals, every case you land is automatically suspect. Totally. Did they really confess, or did like Walker Texas Mesmerizer just knock him over? You know,
coercion, right? It could certainly be considered coercion, or just suspect, right? Suspect testimony.
Yeah, but if Walker Hypno Ranger, if his techniques get us, to the murder weapon, then we're okay. As long as it's a physical piece of evidence that gets us there.
Right. Yeah. It just, in those 21 states, it can't just be hypnosis. If conversation under hypnosis leads to DNA evidence, leads to, like you said, a physical gun, or, they find the car that got stolen, etc., then it's a different conversation. So that's the huge controversy. But you might be interested to note that law enforcement, just in general, U.S. law enforcement, has cited a number of cases where they say hypnosis yielded positive, actionable results. The most infamous, was the kidnapping of a school bus that had like 26 kids and a driver aboard in Chowchilla, California. Have you heard about this one?
Heard a story of it when we were making Zodiac, but was it buried, or was it like, something is firing in my brain, but I would need to go under hypnosis to tell you exactly how I remember it.
You're getting very sleepy. You're right. The story goes that a hypnosis expert spoke with a witness, helped them do this regression exploration, and while they were under this hypnotic questioning, they were able to recall the full license number of a van that the kidnappers drove. It's interesting. I mean, you can do a million, like, you don't necessarily have to hypnotize people. You can help your friends remember things much more clearly, or in a much more distorted manner than they would alone. I'm telling you, just like so many very small things. If you're holding a hot drink, you're going to have more of a fond recollection when you think of stuff in the past. It's nuts. It's so easy to hack, which means that we have to ask ourselves, can we trust the science? How much of the curriculum of these sorts of programs, how much of that curriculum focuses on how to make sure you're not accidentally creating the memory you're attempting to discover, or you're not leading the witness. And it could be so easy. It could be, Darren Brown does this a lot. It could be a quick slip of your speech. So instead you're saying like, okay, you're getting very sleepy. What was the name, Pete, of the person you spoke to at the Dairy Queen? And they're not going to hear that, Pete. But later, as they're increasingly compromised, then of course they're not just going to remember the name Pete. They're going to see in their head the name tag that says Pete. And then boom, this poor schmuck at the Dairy Queen is going up the river. It's terrible. It's possible.
I started feeling really sleepy for some reason, Ben. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, Pete. But yeah, I wanted to bring that to your attention, folks. Of course, that Dairy Queen example is hopefully just a hypothetical example and hasn't occurred in real life, but the danger there is very real, and we need to be aware of this stuff. So I applaud the decision to stop trying to hypnotize witnesses and victims of crime.
And I applaud their attempts to turn it around and make it perpetrator facing rather than victims and witnesses.
We're all applauding. Noel, what are you applauding? We're all applauding right now at the end of the show.
I really just kind of snapped out of this weird stupor that I was in, this fugue state. I don't know what caused it, but I feel like I lost time there.
I'll snap you out with an AV Club headline of a story we're not going to talk about. You ready?
Please.
Scientists plan to shoot massive load of sperm samples onto the moon.
Wow.
They had to choose those. They really chose those words carefully, didn't they?
That's almost British.
Yeah. Massive load. They could have just said massive load. They could have left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that is true. There is something very much like a doomsday vault being proposed for construction on the lunar surface. And there is an editor who absolutely had their day made with that headline. This is strange. I do want to end on one note for the Rangers here. Officer named James DeBrow is quoted as a person who's performed this kind of investigative hypnosis and trained other officers in it. And DeBrow defends the practice. He says, he seems very well aware of the danger of creating a memory when you seek to retrieve one. And he explicitly says, we're trained not to be suggestive. We're not here to give information in a hypnosis session. We're here to retrieve it. But with that, folks, would love to hear what you think about hypnosis and deep faking memories. Please let us know. Let us know what you think the future of deep faking in the digital age is. How can we write a law about it? And if you happen, and we have to say this every so often, if you happen to be a member of the elite in the DPRK, can you email us? I mean, email us if you can. We're not clear on how that would work out for you, but also if you have experience firsthand in the country, we want to hear your story. The world is wondering what on earth is happening in the Hermit Kingdom. We try to be pretty easy to find online.
That's right. You can find us in the usual social media corners of the internet, Facebook and Twitter, where we're Conspiracy Stuff, Instagram, where we're Conspiracy Stuff Show. We even have it's, I guess, digital, but also sort of analog. You can reach us with a rotary phone. It's digital on our end, but if that's how you roll, you can still reach us at 1-833-STDWYTK, where you will hear the sound of Ben's dulcet tones, which will prompt you to leave a 3-minute message. Do your best to keep it in that 3 minutes so we can fit it in to one of our weekly listener mail segments.
That's right. Give us a call. We definitely want to hear from you. We love getting messages that way. We recommend if you do leave a message, please state your name or whatever it is you would like for us to call you. Let us know if it's okay for us to use your voice on the air. Tell us your message. Try and keep it short if possible. Just tell us everything you need to know. And if you want to talk directly to us or say a personal message to us, leave it at the end of the message, please. You've got 3 minutes. If you want to go over that time, you can always send us a good old-fashioned email. Hey, by the way, I don't know about you guys, I'm gonna be watching this Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. Apparently,
the Snyder
it's gonna
cut.
be great.
I heard it's good. It got a solid 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. But I love how the Snyder cut has become kind of internet shorthand for just like the as it was intended, like the Zapruder film, the Snyder cut. You know,
the unabridged, the director's cut.
There you go.
Right?
Boom.
The Criterion.
Yeah, it's the only way to watch Blade Runner, I think.
I'm definitely gonna watch. I'm a sucker for superhero films, even though we got a lot of great feedback from our listeners on the military entertainment complex episode, who were pointing out, you could argue that a lot of superhero films in some ways function as military propaganda. And then for everybody who is asking why we didn't talk more about sports in that episode, stay tuned.
Smart. All right. Well, hey, I think this is it. We're going to give you the email now. Last thing, huge shout out to the whole cast and crew of people that made the Umbrella Academy. I friggin' loved it. I haven't watched a show that I loved that much in a long time. Good work. Congratulations.
It's so good. I haven't finished season 2, but season 1 was a banger. And I think it's so cool that dude from My Chemical Romance, like, comics were his first love before he was even like, a massive emo rock star. And now he's returned to said first love, and he's quite good at it. Quite a good writer. Gerard Way.
All I know is I loved it. If you loved something too and you want to tell us about it, hey, do all the things we already said. Contact us. We'd love to hear from you. Our email address is
conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.